Hello everyone, welcome to our presentation. Today we'll be exploring Mega Goal 3.2, focusing on reading skills. The unit is titled Express Yourself, and we'll be covering pages 172 to 173. I'm excited to share some valuable insights and activities with you. So let's get started and see what's in store for us today. All right, let's start with our warm-up. Today we'll be exploring invented languages, which are fascinating creations that people develop for various reasons. These languages often appear in fiction, like Elvish in Lord of the Rings or Klingon in Star Trek, but some are built for personal or artistic expression. The key idea here is that invented languages are more than just words. They often have their own grammar, pronunciation, and cultural context. Now, before we dive deeper, I want you to think about the title of the article we're discussing. It's probably something that hints at the importance or the magic behind these language creations. This title will give us a clue about the main theme, how these languages shape storytelling, community, or even identity. So, keep that in mind as we move forward, connecting the idea of invented languages to the larger picture of language as a powerful tool for imagination and communication. Our reading strategy today is called timed reading. This is a technique designed to help us improve both our reading speed and our comprehension. The idea is to set a specific time limit for each reading session, which encourages us to read more efficiently without sacrificing understanding. By practicing timed reading regularly, we can train ourselves to recognize words and phrases more quickly, reducing hesitation and increasing fluency. This method connects to our overall goal of becoming more confident and effective readers, whether we're studying, working, or just enjoying a good book. So, as we move forward, keep in mind that timed reading isn't about rushing. It's about balancing speed with comprehension to make our reading more productive and enjoyable. Let's explore the fascinating world of invented languages. First, have you ever wondered how many attempts have been made to create a new language? Throughout history, many individuals and groups have tried to invent languages for various reasons, from communication to artistic expression. Now, most of these attempts haven't really taken off or become widely used, but a few have stood out. For example, the most successful invented language in terms of speakers is Esperanto. So, who created Esperanto? It was invented by a Polish eye doctor named Ludvik Zamenhof in the late 19th century. The name Esperanto actually means one who hopes, reflecting the creator's hope for international understanding and peace. Today, there are still around 2 million people around the world who speak Esperanto, whether as a second language or in communities that promote its use. Moving on to fictional languages, have you heard of Klingon? Yes, that's the language used in the famous television series Star Trek. Klingon has a dedicated fan base, but how many people actually speak it? It's estimated that only a few thousand people speak Klingon fluently, mostly enthusiasts and fans. Now, comparing these languages, which one do you think is more difficult to learn? Generally, constructed languages like Klingon or Esperanto can be challenging, but Klingon is often considered more difficult due to its complex grammar and unique sounds. Finally, an interesting question. Is it possible for invented languages to become widely spoken? While it's rare, some languages like Esperanto were designed with the goal of widespread adoption, and they have gained some traction. However, for an invented language to truly become a global language, it would need to overcome many social, cultural, and practical barriers. I encourage you to read the article in 5 minutes and think about these questions. What makes a language successful, and how do these unique languages fit into our world today? There have been over 500 attempts to invent a language throughout history. It's quite fascinating to see how many people have tried to create a perfect or universal language. These efforts often stem from the desire to improve communication across cultures or to solve misunderstandings. What's really interesting is that despite so many attempts, none have become universally adopted, yet the search for a better way to communicate continues. This shows just how complex and challenging the idea of inventing a language truly is. It also ties back to the overall theme of our presentation, how language shapes our understanding and connection with the world around us. No, not all attempts have been successful. In fact, many of these initiatives face significant challenges and obstacles. The key point here is that success isn't guaranteed. It requires careful planning, innovation, and persistence. When we ask if many of them have been successful, the answer is that some have, but a considerable number have fallen short. This highlights the importance of learning from failures and continuously improving. It also ties into our overall theme of resilience and adapting strategies to achieve better outcomes in this field. So, while success stories are inspiring, understanding the hurdles is equally crucial for making meaningful progress. Let's take a closer look at Esperanto. You might wonder, which invented language has actually had the most speakers? Well, Esperanto was created in the late 19th century by Ludvik Zamenhof with the goal of fostering international communication. Despite being a constructed language, it quickly gained popularity and has an active community worldwide. Today, estimates suggest that there are around 2 million speakers, with several 100,000 fluent speakers. What's fascinating is that Esperanto has a vibrant culture, with books, music, and even travels conducted entirely in the language. This highlights how an invented language can develop a real, living community, and it ties into our overall theme of understanding how languages, whether natural or constructed, shape our connections across the globe. Let's take a moment to talk about Ludvik Zamenhof. He was a Polish doctor, and his story is really fascinating because he's the person who invented Esperanto. Zamenhof's background as a doctor gave him a unique perspective on communication and the importance of understanding each other. He saw the world as full of language barriers that made it difficult for people to connect. So, he decided to create a new language, one that could serve as a universal means of communication. Esperanto was designed to be easy to learn, neutral, and accessible to people from all over the world. Zamenhof's work really ties into the overall theme of this presentation, the idea of building bridges across cultures through language. His invention continues to inspire efforts toward global understanding today. So, what does Esperanto actually mean? Well, the word Esperanto comes from the root spur, which is related to hope. It's a reflection of the core idea behind the language, the hope for a better, more united world through easy and accessible communication. When I think about it, it's really inspiring because it symbolizes optimism and the belief that language can be a tool to bring people together. This hope is not just about language itself, but also about fostering understanding and peace among different cultures. And as we explore the history and use of Esperanto, you'll see how this hope has driven its creation and growth, connecting to the larger theme of how language can serve as a bridge in our diverse world. So, how many people around the world speak Esperanto today? Well, estimates suggest that there are at least 100,000 speakers globally. This number might seem small compared to major world languages, but it's quite significant for a constructed language. It shows that Esperanto has a dedicated community of speakers who use it for communication, cultural exchange, and even travel. What's really interesting is that these speakers are spread across many countries and continents, highlighting Esperanto's role as a truly international language. This point ties into our overall theme of how language can bridge gaps and foster understanding among diverse peoples. Despite being created over a century ago, Esperanto continues to thrive in its own unique way, connecting people worldwide. Let's take a moment to talk about Ludvik Zamenhof, the fascinating individual behind Esperanto. He was a Russian doctor, but his impact went far beyond medicine. Zamenhof dedicated much of his life to creating a language that could foster peace and understanding among people from different backgrounds. His vision was to build a bridge through language, making communication easier and more harmonious worldwide. Now, moving on to the question, what does Esperanto mean? The word itself is derived from the Latin word Esperanto, which means one who hopes. This is quite fitting because the entire purpose of Esperanto was rooted in hope, hope for unity, hope for cooperation, and hope for a better future where language barriers wouldn't cause misunderstandings. So, when we think about Esperanto, we're really thinking about more than just a constructed language. We're thinking about a hopeful vision for global connection. Zamenhof's creation was a way to bring people closer, breaking down the walls that often divide us. And that ties into the larger theme of this presentation, how language can be a powerful tool for peace and international understanding. Let's talk about Star Trek and the fascinating language of Klingon. So, in which television series is Klingon used? Well, Klingon actually features prominently in several series within the Star Trek franchise. Most notably, it's used extensively in Star Trek, the original series, and Star Trek, The Next Generation. But you'll also hear it in Deep Space Nine, where it becomes even more developed as a language and culture. What's interesting is that Klingon isn't just a background language. It's part of the storyline, the culture, and even the identity of the Klingon species. Its use helps to deepen the world building and gives fans a sense of authenticity and immersion. Plus, over time, Klingon evolved from a simple fictional language into a fully developed constructed language, with its own grammar and vocabulary. So, connecting this to our broader theme, Klingon exemplifies how language in science fiction can serve not just as a means of communication, but as a tool to enrich storytelling and cultural complexity. It shows how constructed languages can create a more immersive universe and even foster a real-world community of speakers. So, when we ask how many people speak Klingon, the answer is actually quite small. It's only a few thousand speakers worldwide. This might seem surprising given its origin in popular culture through Star Trek, but it highlights how a constructed language can develop a dedicated, though niche, community. These speakers vary from language enthusiasts and fans to linguists interested in conlangs. It really underscores how language, even fictional ones, can create real communities. And this connects back to our overall theme of how language shapes identity and community, even when it's based on something as fictional as Klingon. So let's talk about Klingon, the language from Star Trek, and compare it to other constructed languages. The key question here is, which of these invented languages is more difficult to learn? Now, Klingon is quite unique because it was intentionally designed to sound alien, with unusual phonetics and grammar rules that aren't found in natural languages. This makes it challenging for new learners to pick up. However, because it was created with a specific purpose and has a relatively small vocabulary, some find it easier to master than other languages. On the other hand, there are languages like Esperanto or Dothraki, which have different levels of complexity. Esperanto, for example, was designed to be easy to learn, with regular grammar and familiar roots. Dothraki, from Game of Thrones, has its own complexities but isn't as fully developed as Klingon. So, when we think about difficulty, it really depends on the learner's background and motivation. Klingon, with its intricate structure and alien sounds, can be quite challenging, especially for those unfamiliar with language construction. But this comparison highlights how diverse constructed languages can be. Some are easier to learn, while others are more complex, depending on their design and purpose. And that ties back to our overall theme of how language creation reflects cultural and imaginative goals. Probably not. When we think about invented languages like Klingon or Dothraki, they're fascinating, but becoming widely spoken is a whole different challenge. For a language to really take off and be used by many people, it needs more than just a dedicated fan base. It requires practical use in daily life, education, commerce, and even government. Most invented languages haven't reached that level of widespread adoption because they lack the natural social and cultural factors that support language survival and growth. Plus, existing major languages already serve those functions so well that new invented languages struggle to break through. So, while it's a fun idea, the reality is that most invented languages probably won't become widely spoken. It's a reminder of how complex and deeply rooted language is in our social fabric. This ties into the overall theme of how language shapes our communication and cultural identity. So, how many questions did you answer correctly after the timed reading? This question is really about measuring your understanding and accuracy under time pressure. It helps us see how well you grasped the material when speed was a factor. Remember, the goal here isn't just about getting the right answers, but also about improving your ability to think quickly and efficiently. This ties into our overall theme of enhancing both comprehension and performance under test conditions. By reflecting on this, You can identify areas where you might need to practice more or develop better strategies for managing your time and focus. Some inventors have had a variety of goals when it comes to creating new languages. For example, some wanted to develop a language that is simple and easy to learn, making communication more accessible. Others aimed to create a gender-neutral language, promoting equality and inclusivity in how we express ourselves. And then there are those who focused on making languages more mathematical or scientific, to better suit technical or specialized fields. These different approaches all reflect the broader theme of how language can be shaped to serve specific needs and purposes. It's fascinating to see how inventive minds have approached the idea of language from so many different angles. On this slide, we see the story of Malbella. Zamenhof grew up near 4 different ethnic groups, each speaking their own language. These groups didn't always get along, and the language barriers often contributed to misunderstandings and conflicts. Zamenhof believed that language was at the root of these problems. He thought that if everyone spoke a common language, it would help foster better understanding and harmony among these groups. This idea was a key part of his overall vision, to create a universal language that could unite people across cultural and linguistic divides. It's a powerful reminder of how language influences our relationships and how a simple idea can have the potential to bring about meaningful change. People didn't want to spend too much time learning a new language that few people spoke. This highlights an important point about language adoption. People tend to prefer learning languages that have a wider reach and more practical use. If a language is spoken by only a small group, it's less likely to attract learners because they see limited benefits. This is a key factor in why certain languages don't spread as quickly or widely as others. It connects to the overall theme of how practical considerations, like usefulness and accessibility, influence language learning and dissemination. So, understanding this helps us see why some languages flourish, while others remain niche. Today, I want to talk about Klingon, which is the language of the Klingons, a fictional race of people from outer space. Now, what's really interesting is that Klingon was actually invented specifically for the Star Trek universe. It's not based on any real-world language, but rather created from scratch to bring these alien characters to life. This unique language helps deepen the lore and makes the Klingons feel more authentic and immersive in the stories. So, when we look at how languages like Klingon are developed for science fiction, it highlights the creativity and effort that goes into world building in media. It's a perfect example of how language can be used to make fictional worlds more believable and engaging for fans and viewers alike. So, on this final slide, I want to highlight that both Esperanto and Klingon are examples of invented languages, but they serve very different purposes. Klingon was created specifically for the Star Trek universe, and interestingly, its circulation has actually generated quite a lot of revenue for the studio. It's become a cultural phenomenon in its own right. On the other hand, Esperanto was developed with a much more humanitarian goal in mind. It was created to bring people together by providing a common language that anyone could learn. These examples really underscore the fascinating ways in which constructed languages can be used, either to entertain and generate profit, or to foster connection and understanding across different communities. It ties back to our overall theme of how language, even when invented, can have powerful social and cultural impacts.